Don't make a sound. My eyes opened to darkness and the faint green glow of the heart monitor beside my bed. For a few seconds, I didn't know where I was. Then the pain under my ribs reminded me. St. Catherine Medical Center. Outside Columbus. Emergency abdominal surgery less than 24 hours earlier. A man stood beside my bed. Tall. Gray suit beneath an unbuttoned overcoat. Police badge in one hand. Detective Daniel Mercer. I recognized him vaguely from earlier that afternoon, when he had spoken to a nurse outside my room. He reached over and switched off the television. Then he leaned close enough that I could hear him without him raising his voice. Your daughter thinks you're unconscious. My heart monitor began ticking faster. Mercer glanced at it. Mrs. Carter, whatever you hear in the next few minutes, stay still. Through the partially closed door came my daughter's voice. Lauren. Then her husband's. Grant. I couldn't make out every word. But I heard Lauren say something that made the pain from my surgery disappear beneath something colder. We need to take control before Mom changes her mind. Mercer looked at me. And suddenly, all the strange things that had happened over the previous 6 months stopped feeling strange. They started feeling connected. It had begun with a blue folder. My husband, Thomas, had kept important documents in different colors because he claimed filing cabinets were where useful information went to die. Insurance was red. Taxes were green. Property records were blue. After Thomas died, I kept his system. The blue folder contained documents for 14 acres of undeveloped land southwest of Columbus that Thomas had inherited decades earlier. Grant had wanted me to sell it twice. The first time, he called it dead capital. The second time, he brought market projections. I refused both times. Thomas had loved that land. More importantly, before he died, he had made me promise something I never fully understood. If you ever sell those acres, Evie, read page 9 first. I had laughed. Page 9 of what? You'll know. Thomas could be irritatingly mysterious when he wanted to be. 3 years after his death, I still hadn't sold. Then one Tuesday morning, the blue folder disappeared. I searched my study twice. Lauren happened to be visiting. Maybe Uncle Nathan took it, she said. My brother doesn't take documents without asking. Lauren shrugged. You've been letting him handle everything lately. There was something sharp underneath the comment. Nathan was my younger brother and a CPA. He had helped me organize my finances after Thomas died. Lauren had never objected until she married Grant. Then suddenly Nathan was controlling. A week after the folder vanished, I received a late payment notice from my homeowner's insurance company. I remember staring at the envelope. Impossible. The payment was automatic. When I told Lauren, she gave me a concerned smile. Mom, you've been forgetting things. One missed payment isn't dementia. I didn't say dementia. But the word hung between us because she had wanted it there. After that, the incidents multiplied. A dental appointment I supposedly forgot. A charity payment duplicated. A streaming subscription purchased twice. An electric bill marked overdue. Each mistake was small enough to explain. Together, they became a story. And Lauren told that story whenever anyone would listen. At my sister-in-law's birthday dinner, I asked where the serving spoon was. Lauren laughed. Careful, everybody. Mom's having another senior moment. Everyone chuckled. I did too. That was my mistake. I had spent 35 years working in elementary education, 22 of them as a principal. I had mediated divorcing parents, angry teachers, frightened children, budget crises, and one memorable incident involving a second grader, a fire alarm, and a stolen hamster. I knew how to recognize manipulation in other people's families. I simply refused to recognize it in mine. Because Lauren was my only child. And after Thomas died, losing Lauren frightened me more than losing money ever could. So when she apologized, I forgave her. When she snapped at me, I blamed stress. When she began asking strangely specific questions about my medications, I called it concern. "What time do you take the nighttime pill?" she asked one evening. "About 10. "Exactly 10. "Usually." "And does it make you sleepy right away?" I laughed. "What is this, an interrogation?" Her face changed for half a second. Then she smiled. "I worry about you living alone." I didn't understand why that question bothered me until much later. Nathan did. He called me 2 weeks afterward. "Evie, have you changed anything with your online accounts?" "No." "Passwords?" "No." "Authorized users?" I hesitated. Lauren had convinced me months earlier to let Grant help simplify some household billing. "He's good with systems," she had said. "You shouldn't have to keep track of everything yourself." So Grant had helped organize online payments. When I told Nathan, the silence on the phone stretched. "What?" I asked. "I'm seeing irregularities." "What kind?" Payment stopped and restarted. Notification settings changed. A few logins at odd hours. I felt defensive immediately. Grant was helping. "I'm not accusing anyone." That sentence was all Lauren needed. By dinner that Sunday, she already knew Nathan had called. "He's checking your accounts behind your back. He's my accountant. He's positioning himself." "For what?" "My inheritance." I stared at her. Lauren's eyes filled with tears. "Dad's gone. You're getting older. Nathan knows eventually everything comes to me." Grant sat beside her without saying a word. That was his gift. Silence. He let Lauren make accusations while he remained the reasonable husband, gently touching her shoulder. I became angry with Nathan instead. I told him to stop treating me like a client who couldn't understand her own finances. He sounded hurt. But he backed away. Exactly as Lauren wanted. Then came the night I collapsed. I remember reaching for a glass in my kitchen. Then pain. Then the floor. Lauren rode with me to the hospital. Grant arrived surprisingly fast. Too fast. As nurses wheeled me toward surgery, he appeared at the end of the corridor. "Room 614 after recovery," he asked Lauren. She blinked. "How did you know her room?" Grant paused. "Only briefly. Admissions told me." At the time, I barely noticed. Later, I would remember Lauren hadn't even known the room number yet. Surgery blurred everything afterward. Voices. Medication. Hands adjusting tubes. Lauren telling nurses I had been confused lately. A social worker asking whether I managed my own finances. Lauren answering before I could. When I protested, she squeezed my hand. "Rest, Mom. I'll handle everything." That afternoon, I woke and found her removing papers from my overnight bag. "What are you doing?" "Keeping these safe." "Give them back." She froze. Then her expression softened into something worse than anger. Pity. "Mom, you already asked me to take them." "No, I didn't." She stared at me. For one terrible second, I questioned myself. Had I? The medication was strong. Maybe I had forgotten. Lauren leaned down and kissed my forehead. "See? This is what I've been trying to tell you." She left with the papers. Hours later, I woke again. 11:47 p.m. That was when Detective Mercer entered. That was when he told me not to move. And that was when I heard my daughter outside my hospital room. Grant's voice was lower. "We don't need her agreement anymore." Lauren whispered something I couldn't catch. Then Grant answered. "The petition handles that." "Petition?" My fingers tightened beneath the blanket. Lauren said, "What if Nathan finds out? He won't matter once you have authority." My chest felt hollow. Authority over what? My accounts? My house? My land? My life? Mercer raised one finger, warning me to stay quiet. Then footsteps approached. I closed my eyes. The door opened. Lauren entered. She stood beside my bed for several seconds. I could feel her watching me. Then she whispered to someone behind her. "She's still out." Grant answered from the doorway. "Good." A pause. Then my daughter said the words that shattered the last excuse I had been making for her. "Tomorrow morning, I'll tell the attorney Mom isn't competent to make her own decisions." I lay perfectly still. And for the first time in my life, I realized my daughter wasn't afraid of losing me. She was preparing to take control of me. I didn't sleep after Lauren left my hospital room. I kept my eyes closed until her footsteps disappeared down the hallway, but my mind was painfully awake. Not competent to make my own decisions. Those words kept repeating in my head. Detective Mercer waited almost a full minute before speaking. "Mrs. Carter, do you know what your daughter meant by a petition?" "No." My voice came out weak. "Then tomorrow morning, don't sign anything." I turned toward him. "Why are you here?" Mercer looked toward the door before answering. "Because your son-in-law's name came up in an investigation I'm working." Grant. The charming developer who sent flowers after my surgery. The man who always insisted on paying for dinner. The husband who barely spoke whenever Lauren accused Nathan of being greedy. What investigation? I can't discuss all of it yet. But I can tell you this, if Grant Hale asks you to sign something, you call an attorney first. Then Mercer left. By 8 the next morning, I understood why. Lauren entered carrying coffee and a smile. Behind her was a woman in a charcoal suit. "Mom, this is Rebecca Sloan." Rebecca introduced herself as an attorney. "Not mine. Lauren's." They had filed an emergency petition requesting temporary guardianship. Of me. For several seconds, I honestly thought I had misunderstood. "I'm 61, Lauren. This isn't about age. I ran an elementary school with 600 children. You're not running a school anymore." Rebecca stepped in gently. The petition, she explained, claimed I had demonstrated a pattern of impaired judgment and memory problems that created a risk to my health and finances. A pattern. That word terrified me more than any accusation could have. Because Lauren had evidence. She had the missed dental appointment. The late homeowner's insurance payment. The duplicated charity donation. The medication questions. Statements from relatives who had heard Lauren joke about my senior moments. Even a note from a neighbor describing the afternoon I had left my garage door open for several hours. Normal mistakes. Ordinary mistakes. But arranged in the right order, they looked like something else. "You've been building a case against me," I whispered. Lauren's face crumpled. "I've been protecting you." "From whom?" She hesitated. Then she said it. "Uncle Nathan." Apparently, Nathan's concern about my accounts had become evidence that he was interfering with my finances. His access as my CPA became suspicious. His questions became pressure. Lauren had even told relatives that Nathan opposed the guardianship because he was afraid someone would discover what he had done. I had helped her make that lie believable. I was the one who had angrily told Nathan to back off. By lunchtime, he arrived at the hospital. Lauren tried blocking him from my room. I heard them arguing outside. "You've done enough," she snapped. Nathan's answer was quiet. "You have no idea what you're doing." When he finally entered, he looked 10 years older. He placed a stack of papers on my tray. "Evie, I need you to look at these. Bank records. Utility statements. Account activity." I barely understood what I was seeing. Nathan pointed to dates. "Your insurance payment didn't fail because there wasn't money. Someone disabled autopay." My stomach tightened. "The electric bill? Same thing. The duplicate charity payment? Manual transaction after the original payment had already processed." I looked toward the door. Could I have done that? Nathan didn't answer immediately. "Yes." That honesty made me trust him more. "But I don't think you did." Lauren came back before he could explain why. She saw the records. Her expression hardened. "This is exactly what I was talking about." Nathan stood. "What?" "You overwhelming her with financial documents while she's recovering." "I'm showing her evidence." "You're confusing her." "I'm not confused," I said. Lauren looked at me with that same unbearable pity. "Mom, yesterday you accused me of taking papers you had already given me." I froze. Nathan turned toward me. "What papers?" Lauren answered for me. "Insurance documents. Property records. Things she could lose. Property records. The 14 acres. Where are they?" "Safe." "Bring them back." "Not right now." That was the moment something changed inside me. Not completely. I still wanted an innocent explanation. But I stopped believing I was required to invent one. 2 days later, the temporary restrictions began. Because the guardianship petition alleged potential financial vulnerability, certain transactions on my accounts were flagged while attorneys sorted through who had authority to do what. I couldn't access one investment account normally. A bank representative told me additional verification was required. Lauren called it temporary. I called it humiliation. Then Nathan found something worse. A commercial real estate broker named Peter Walsh had requested preliminary information about my 14 acres. The contact person listed on the inquiry was Lauren Hale. My daughter. I confronted her that evening. "You're trying to sell Thomas's land." Her face went pale. "I was getting a valuation." "You contacted a commercial broker." "I needed to know what it was worth." "It isn't yours." "Eventually it will be." The words exploded out of her. Silence followed. Lauren stared at me as if she wished she could pull them back. Then years of resentment poured out instead. "You always do this." "Do what?" "Act like responsibility is some kind of moral superiority." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She started crying. "Dad dies, and suddenly Uncle Nathan becomes the person you trust. Grant gives advice and you question him. I suggest anything and you treat me like I'm still 16. That has nothing to do with selling my property. It has everything to do with it." Then Grant appeared in the doorway. Of course he did. Calm. Controlled. "Lauren, go get some air." She left. Grant sat in a chair beside my bed. "Evelyn, she's terrified." "Of what?" "Losing you." I almost laughed. Instead, I asked, why does she need my land to keep from losing me? For the first time, Grant's expression slipped. Only slightly. Then the smile returned. This isn't about the land. But it was. I knew it now. I just didn't know why. That night, Mercer returned. 11:47 again. He closed the door. You need to see something. He placed a photocopy on my blanket. It appeared to be an authorization related to preliminary property negotiations. At the bottom was my name. Evelyn Carter. And beneath it, my signature. I stared at it. It looked real. Not similar. Real. That's my signature. Look at the date. I did. 3 days earlier. My mouth went dry. 3 days earlier, I had been in this hospital. For part of that day, I had been heavily sedated following emergency surgery. Mercer pulled out another sheet. Your medical record establishes when you were medicated. According to this document, you signed during a period when your chart indicates you were not capable of sitting in a broker's office, or authorizing anything electronically without assistance. Where did you get this? It surfaced in connection with another complaint involving Hale Development Group. Grant's company. Mercer watched my face carefully. Did you authorize this? No. Did you give Grant permission to use your signature? No. Lauren? No. Then I remembered something. The blue folder. My missing property documents. Grant knowing my hospital room before Lauren did. The cancelled bills. The strange appointments. Lauren asking exactly when my medication made me sleepy. I looked at Mercer. How long have you been investigating Grant? Long enough to know he has financial problems. What kind? He didn't answer directly. Instead, he tapped the forged document. Ask yourself why a man with financial problems would suddenly become interested in proving his mother-in-law can't manage her own property. A cold realization moved through me. Lauren thought Nathan wanted my inheritance. But what if someone had taught her to think that? What if every mistake she had been collecting wasn't evidence she discovered? What if some of it had been created for her to discover? I thought about Grant sitting silently at family dinners while Lauren humiliated me. He had never needed to attack me. He had Lauren do it. Mercer stood to leave. Don't confront either of them yet. Why? Because right now, whoever created this thinks you don't know it exists. After he left, I studied my signature again. I had spent months defending myself. Explaining forgotten appointments. Explaining bills. Explaining why I was still competent. Suddenly I understood I had been asking the wrong question. The question wasn't whether I was forgetting things. It was who benefited every time it looked like I had. And sometime after midnight, staring at a signature I had never written, another thought occurred to me. If someone was willing to forge my name while I lay sedated in a hospital bed, then the guardianship petition wasn't the beginning of the plan. It was the end of one that had started months ago. The next morning, I apologized to Lauren. That was the first move I made against Grant Hale. She was standing beside the window arranging flowers when I said it. I think I've been unfair to you. Lauren turned slowly. What? I'm tired. The medication is making everything cloudy. Maybe I've been fighting because I'm scared. Her entire posture softened. She hurried to my bedside and took my hand. Oh, Mom. I let my eyes fill with tears. That part required no acting. I don't want us fighting anymore. Lauren squeezed my fingers. We won't. Behind her, Grant stood in the doorway. He smiled. But his smile was different now. Relief. That was when I understood Detective Mercer had been right. Grant believed I was still blind. For the next 4 days, I gave him exactly what he wanted. I became uncertain. When Lauren mentioned a conversation I remembered clearly, I frowned and asked her to remind me. When Grant discussed finances, I told him numbers exhausted me. When a nurse asked whether I knew what day it was, I deliberately hesitated before answering correctly. Not enough to create new medical evidence against me. Just enough for Lauren and Grant to believe I was deteriorating. Meanwhile, Nathan and I began rebuilding the previous 6 months. Quietly. He visited only when Lauren thought he had stopped coming. We communicated through an attorney Nathan trusted, Margaret Whitmore, who had handled estate matters for several families he represented. Nathan brought legitimate records obtained through the financial access I had already authorized years earlier. We started with the insurance payment. Autopay had been disabled at 10:38 p.m. The electric bill settings changed at 10:51. Notification preferences on another account were altered at 11:06. All on nights when I normally took my medication around 10. Lauren's questions suddenly made sense. What time do you take the nighttime pill? Exactly 10. Does it make you sleepy right away? I felt sick. Nathan noticed. Evie. She asked me those questions. His face hardened. Grant had access to the household account dashboard. That alone proved nothing. But the pattern did. Nathan obtained login records where available. Several changes were associated with devices and network information connected to Hale Development Group's office systems. Not every one. Enough. Then we checked my appointments. The dental appointment I had supposedly forgotten. Cancelled online 48 hours beforehand. My annual eye exam. Rescheduled through the patient portal. The charity luncheon Lauren claimed I had forgotten attending. The reminder email had been deleted. Somebody hadn't been documenting my confusion. Somebody had been manufacturing it. But one question still bothered me. Why? Nathan looked at me. The land. We already suspected that. We didn't yet understand how desperately Grant needed it. Margaret did. 2 days after taking my case, she entered my hospital room carrying a slim file. Hale Development Group is in serious trouble. Grant's public image suggested the opposite. Luxury SUV. Tailored suits. Country club photographs. Groundbreakings with politicians. But underneath that image sat debt. A commercial development called Prescott Commons had stalled after financing costs increased and 2 major tenants withdrew. Grant had personally guaranteed part of the debt. One lender was approaching a deadline that could trigger default provisions. Then Margaret placed a county property map in front of me. Prescott Commons sat directly beside my 14 acres. I stared at the boundary lines. If he acquires my property, he potentially expands the project footprint, Nathan said. More road access. More development options. A better story for lenders. Suddenly, 6 months of my life rearranged themselves. Grant had never needed Lauren's inheritance. He needed something I owned now. And I had refused to sell it. Twice. So he created another path. If I became legally incapable of managing my affairs and Lauren gained sufficient authority, he could pressure her toward a sale while convincing her she was protecting her future inheritance. Lauren wasn't innocent. But she wasn't the architect either. Grant had found the oldest wound between us and widened it. Lauren had always believed I judged her. Grant turned that resentment into leverage. Nathan had always been the person I trusted financially. Grant turned that trust into suspicion. And my fear of losing my daughter had done the rest. That realization hurt more than the forged signature. Because Grant hadn't created every weakness in our family. He had simply studied the ones already there. So I stopped giving him new ones. Mercer came twice more. He never promised me an arrest. He never turned my hospital room into some television crime scene. He simply took information relevant to the broader fraud complaint involving Grant's company and told us to preserve everything exactly as we found it. Margaret handled the guardianship battle. Nathan handled the numbers. And I handled Grant. I asked Lauren one afternoon whether he could visit. Alone. He arrived 20 minutes later. I made my voice tired. I don't want court. Neither does Lauren. I'm thinking maybe selling the property would simplify things. Grant became perfectly still. There it was. The reaction I wanted. Which property? He knew exactly which property. Thomas's acreage. Grant moved his chair closer. That might be wise. I need someone to explain the paperwork. I can do that. Personally. He smiled. Of course. Control. Mercer had identified Grant's weakness, but now I saw it myself. Grant delegated blame. He did not delegate important details. He needed every variable controlled. Including me. Within 48 hours, Lauren brought revised documents to the hospital. Grant had prepared them. Margaret quietly obtained copies. The documents moved far beyond a harmless valuation. They created a path toward authorization for negotiations involving the acreage. Grant was accelerating. His loan deadline was getting closer. So was the guardianship hearing. For the first time, I felt we might actually beat him. Then Grant walked into my room carrying a printed email. Lauren followed. Her eyes were red. "Mom," she whispered, "why didn't you tell me?" My stomach tightened. Grant placed the page on my tray. The email had been sent from my account 4 months earlier. To Lauren. The subject line was ordinary. The sentence wasn't. Sometimes I don't trust my own memory anymore. I stared at it. I remembered writing those words. That was the worst part. Grant didn't need to forge this evidence. It was mine. Lauren sat beside me. You admitted it yourself. I looked at Grant. He said nothing. He didn't need to. This was stronger than late bills or missed appointments. My own words appeared to confirm that I had questioned my mental condition months before surgery. Margaret reviewed the printout that evening. It's damaging. Nathan paced near the window. Can we challenge when it was sent? It came from her account, Margaret said. And Evelyn remembers writing it. I felt the old panic returning. Maybe Grant had manipulated my bills. Maybe he had manipulated appointments. But this? This came from me. Nathan suddenly stopped pacing. Where's the rest? Margaret looked up. The rest of what? The email. That's the email. No. Nathan picked up the page. There's no previous message. No reply. No thread history. Nothing showing what conversation produced this sentence. Grant had submitted a clean printout containing exactly what he wanted everyone to read. Nathan turned toward me. Evie, what were you talking about when you wrote this? I closed my eyes. 4 months earlier. Lauren and I had been arguing. She had insisted I had promised Grant something. A dinner? A meeting? No. Property. Then I remembered. I opened my eyes. I didn't write that because I thought I was losing my memory. Nathan was already opening his laptop. My pulse quickened. I wrote it because Lauren and Grant kept telling me conversations had happened that I couldn't remember. Nathan searched the archived mailbox. Then he stopped. His expression changed. What? He rotated the laptop toward Margaret and me. There was the original thread. And there was my complete sentence. Sometimes I don't trust my own memory anymore when you and Grant keep insisting conversations happen that I cannot remember. Grant had removed everything after the word anymore. Not fabricated. Edited. Just enough truth to make the lie believable. Margaret leaned back slowly. This changes the hearing. I looked at the printed version Grant had confidently delivered. For 6 months, he had controlled context. Bills without explaining who changed them. Appointments without showing who cancelled them. My mistakes without the circumstances around them. Nathan's concern without the suspicious transactions that caused it. And now my sentence without its ending. Grant's greatest strength had finally revealed his weakness. He didn't merely want people to believe his story. He needed to decide exactly which pieces of reality they were allowed to see. The guardianship hearing was 48 hours away. Grant believed he had just handed us the final proof of my incompetence. Instead, he had given us something far more valuable. A documented example of how his entire scheme worked. Margaret closed the laptop. Do we confront him? I thought about Lauren crying beside my hospital bed. I thought about the missing blue folder. My forged signature. Thomas telling me to read page 9. Then I thought about Grant's expression when I offered to discuss selling the land. No. Nathan stared at me. What are you going to do? For the first time since this began, I wasn't frightened. I was ready. Nothing. I looked at the clock. Grant wants control. I slid his edited email back into its folder. So tomorrow, we're going to let him believe he has it. Grant wore a navy suit to the guardianship hearing. I remember that because Thomas owned one almost exactly like it. The difference was Thomas wore suits when responsibility required it. Grant wore them like armor. Lauren sat beside him, clutching a leather folder against her chest. She looked exhausted. When our eyes met, she gave me a small, reassuring smile. That almost broke me. She still believed she was saving me. Margaret Whitmore sat on my right. Nathan sat several rows behind us. Detective Mercer wasn't participating in the guardianship case, but I knew the evidence relevant to his fraud investigation had already gone where it needed to go. Grant didn't know that. More importantly, he didn't know I had stopped being afraid of him. The hearing began exactly the way he expected. Lauren described my supposed decline. The missed appointments. The unpaid bills. The duplicated payments. My forgotten conversations. She cried when she described finding me after surgery, vulnerable and confused. I'm not trying to take anything from my mother, she said. I'm trying to protect her before someone takes advantage of her. She looked toward Nathan. That hurt. But I stayed quiet. Margaret had warned me not to react emotionally. Grant had built his case around making every protest look like instability. So I let him talk. Then came the email. Sometimes I don't trust my own memory anymore. Lauren's attorney presented it as evidence that I had recognized my own cognitive problems months before hospitalization. Grant glanced at me. For just a second, our eyes met. He thought it was over. Margaret stood. Mrs. Hale, did your mother miss a dental appointment in March? Yes. Margaret displayed the appointment record. Actually, it was cancelled online 48 hours beforehand. Lauren frowned. I didn't know that. Did your mother fail to pay her homeowner's insurance? Yes. Records show autopay was disabled at 10:38 p.m. from an authenticated session associated with an account environment Mrs. Carter had previously allowed your husband to help administer. Grant shifted. Lauren looked at him. Margaret continued. The electric payment settings. The changed notifications. The duplicated transaction. One by one, the little mistakes that had been used to prove I was declining became something else. Not proof of incompetence. Evidence of interference. Then Margaret introduced the login history Nathan had helped preserve. Several suspicious changes were connected to devices or networks associated with Hale Development Group. Grant leaned toward his attorney. His confidence was beginning to crack. Lauren stared at him. "You said she was doing those things herself." "Lauren," he whispered, "not now." Margaret heard him. "So did I." Next came the property map. Prescott Commons. Grant stalled commercial development. Then my 14 acres beside it. Margaret explained the financial pressure surrounding Hale Development Group and the approaching loan problems documented through legitimate records. For the first time, Lauren seemed to understand why her husband had been so interested in my property. She turned toward him. "You told me selling it was for Mom." Grant's jaw tightened. "It was." Margaret placed another document on the table. The authorization bearing my signature. "Mr. Hale, are you familiar with this?" His attorney objected to the direction of the questioning. But the document's relevance was obvious. It had been used in connection with the property negotiations at the center of the dispute. Margaret pointed to the date. Then she produced my hospital records. On the day Mrs. Carter supposedly authorized this document, she was recovering from emergency surgery. At the relevant time, her medical chart shows she had been heavily sedated. Silence. Lauren looked at me. Then at Grant. "I thought Mom signed that." Grant didn't answer. "I asked you if she signed it." "Lauren. You said she did." "That was when I saw it." "Not guilt." "Not yet." Recognition. My daughter was finally seeing the machinery behind the story she had helped build. Grant realized it too. So he did what controlling men often do when control disappears. He blamed the nearest person. Lauren handled most of Evelyn's affairs. Lauren recoiled. "What?" "I only became involved because you kept telling me your mother was deteriorating." My daughter stared at him. "You told me she was deteriorating." "I said you should pay attention." "You showed me the late payments." "Because you asked for help." I watched their marriage fracture in less than 30 seconds. Grant had spent months making Lauren his most useful witness. Now he was trying to make her his shield. Margaret waited until they stopped arguing. Then she presented the email. Grant's version first. "Sometimes I don't trust my own memory anymore." Then the archived version. The full sentence appeared on the screen. "Sometimes I don't trust my own memory anymore when you and Grant keep insisting conversations happen that I cannot remember." Lauren covered her mouth. Grant went pale. Margaret didn't dramatize it. She didn't need to. The submitted version removed the portion that changed the meaning of Mrs. Carter's statement. Grant tried claiming he had received the shortened version. Then Nathan's records established where the archived email had been preserved and when. Another explanation collapsed. Finally, Margaret looked at me. "Mrs. Carter, after your surgery, did you continue experiencing the confusion your daughter described?" I took a breath. "I pretended to." Lauren stared at me. "I told them about 11:47 p.m. Detective Mercer entering my hospital room. His warning. The impossible signature date. And my decision afterward to stop arguing and start watching. I wanted to know what they would do if they believed I had stopped resisting. What happened? Grant became more aggressive about the land. I described asking him to explain the sale personally. The revised documents appeared almost immediately. That mattered. Grant hadn't been reacting to my supposed incapacity. He had been waiting to exploit it. By the end of the hearing, the story Lauren had presented as concern no longer looked protective. The guardianship effort collapsed. The attempted property transaction was stopped. And the relevant documents, account activity, and signature evidence remained available for Mercer's broader investigation into Grant and Hale Development Group. I expected Victory to feel better. Instead, outside the hearing room, I found Lauren sitting alone on a bench. Grant was gone. She looked up at me. "Mom." I stopped. Her face crumpled. "I thought Nathan was trying to take everything." "You chose to believe that. Grant kept showing me things. And you kept collecting them." She started crying. "I was scared. So was I. I thought I was protecting you. You were preparing to testify that I shouldn't control my own life." She had no answer. Then she whispered, "Can you forgive me?" 6 months earlier, I would have hugged her immediately. I would have told her we were family. I would have erased the wound before she had to understand what caused it. Instead, I sat beside her. "I forgive you." Hope appeared in her eyes. Then I finished. "But forgiveness doesn't restore trust." Her face changed. "I love you, Lauren. But you won't have access to my accounts. You won't make medical decisions for me. And you won't be involved with my property." "For how long?" "I don't know." That was the first boundary I had ever given my daughter without apologizing for it. Weeks later, I returned home. Nathan helped me rebuild everything. New passwords. New authorizations. New financial controls. Then one Saturday morning, while reorganizing Thomas's old study, I found another copy of the property agreement behind a row of tax binders. Complete. Not the summary documents from the missing blue folder. I smiled when I saw it. Then I remembered Thomas's voice. "If you ever sell those acres, Evie, read page 9 first." My hands began trembling. I turned the pages. 6. 7. 8. 9. And there it was. A land use restriction preserved when Thomas arranged the estate. A substantial portion of the acreage could not be developed for the type of commercial expansion Grant needed without satisfying conditions his Prescott Commons project could not meet. I read it twice. Then called Nathan. He arrived an hour later. After reviewing the agreement, he leaned back and almost laughed. Grant never knew. The missing blue folder had contained summary property information, parcel numbers, valuation records, maps. Enough for Grant to understand where the land was. Not enough to understand what could legally be done with it. "He photographed the wrong documents," I said. Nathan nodded. Grant had risked his marriage. Manipulated my daughter. Interfered with my finances. Tried to make me appear incompetent. Possibly forged my signature. All because he believed controlling 14 acres would rescue his development. But even if everything had worked. Even if Lauren had won guardianship. Even if I had been silenced. Even if Grant had forced the transaction through. The land could never have saved him the way he imagined. Thomas had known something Grant never bothered to learn. Ownership and control were not the same thing. Months later, Lauren and I were speaking again. Carefully. She was no longer with Grant. I didn't ask her to choose between him and me. Reality made that choice for her. She began counseling and stopped asking when things would go back to normal. Eventually, I told her they wouldn't. We would build something new or we would build nothing. Strangely, she accepted that. As for the land, I kept it. But I stopped treating it like a monument to Thomas. I donated the use of a small section for a community garden and outdoor education program. On the first planting day, children from a nearby elementary school arrived carrying tiny shovels and seed packets. One little boy held a tomato plant like it was made of glass. I stood near the edge of the field watching them dig. A wooden sign had been installed beside the path. The Thomas Carter Learning Garden. Nathan stood beside me. Thomas would have loved it. For years, I believed loving my family meant keeping the door open no matter how many times someone hurt me walking through it. I know better now. Forgiveness can leave the door unlocked. But boundaries decide who gets a key. Grant tried to take my property because he thought controlling it would save his life. Lauren tried to control me because she believed fear was the same thing as love. And I nearly surrendered everything because I believed protecting myself meant abandoning my daughter. We were all wrong. I looked across those 14 acres as children pressed seeds into the soil Grant had tried so desperately to steal. For the first time since Thomas died, the land didn't feel like something I had inherited from my husband. It felt like something I had chosen for myself. And after everything they had tried to take from me, that choice was worth more than the property ever was.